can't attend. And I will be posting it to the LibGuide I'll be sharing later, the library guide I'll be sharing later. So you can always go back and find the video as well as the slides. So no need to feverishly be taking notes. I'll be sharing the recording and the slides afterwards. So first and foremost, let me say that this is the first of what I hope will be a series of these kinds of workshops wherein we present to the Graduate Student Council content that is relevant to graduate students at Adelphi. In addition to being the digital publishing librarian, I am also the liaison to the Graduate Student Council. And in that role, I am attempting to develop programming and other sorts of content that would benefit graduate students regardless of their department, discipline, or school. So working with your online scholarly identity is one such topic that crosses across all of the different disciplinary boundaries. Another is bibliographic management software, so like citation management software such as Zotero. So next semester we'll be offering a Zotero workshop, as well as hopefully another workshop that is partially at least informed by the graduate community in terms of what you would like to see. So if you have ideas for other kinds of webinars that we can provide, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat or to email me directly, and we'll do our best to make them a reality. Okay, as I mentioned, this is fairly informal, so if you have any short questions or need for clarification or like me to repeat anything, please don't hesitate to just unmute yourself and ask. And I won't be monitoring the chat until the end, when we'll have hopefully about 10 to 15 minutes to have a more extended discussion with more in-depth questions. Any questions right now, though, before we get started? Okay, great. All right, so let's begin by talking about what we'll actually be covering today. So first, we're going to be talking about the basics of online scholarly identity, what it means, and the role it can play in your lives and careers. Next, we'll be looking at some best practices for managing your online scholarly identity. Then we'll look at types and features of some SI platforms, because there are lots of differences between them. And then we'll take a closer look at some of the ones you may have heard of and some of the more popular ones out there, including Google Scholar, ORCID, Scopus, and Humanities Commons. We'll also take a look at Semantic Scholar, which is a cutting-edge scholarly search engine that uses AI. And so it's important to know about sort of where the future's heading with these platforms. And then lastly, we'll look at AU Scholarly Works, which is our institutional repository. And that gives you the opportunity to upload content to a secure database where you will be given the work will be given a digital object identifier, and you can very easily share it professionally and easily online. So as I mentioned at the beginning, much of this content is going to be on the Open Access and Scholarly Communications Guide that we maintain at the library, and there's a special page just devoted to that. Okay, so let's dive into the basics of scholarly identity. The fundamental purpose of these of scholarly identity and these profiles is to provide your peers and other researchers with authoritative information and links. We know how much information there is even about ourselves out there, and how much of it can be mistaken or only half true. And so the idea behind these profiles and websites is to get at to provide the world with a trusted portal that you maintain that will provide accurate information and working links to your content and your scholarship. You're going to be able to distinguish yourself in your work in the world and facilitate, collaboration. As someone named Chris Barnes, there are a lot of Chris Barneses out there. I can attest that it really does pay off to distinguish yourself. And I've had other attendees at this webinar tell me that even with less common names, they have encountered individuals with their same name working in even the same field, perhaps in another country. And so it's important to be able to distinguish yourself from the other the other people with your name out there. Next, you can improve the visibility and impact of your scholarship. So, if you're publishing something, or if you're giving a presentation, say at a conference, you will be able to upload or share that presentation via these platforms. And that is going to help you get found online and your work found online, and improve the visibility overall. These profiles can be created or claimed, and errors, omissions, and misattributions can be corrected. And it's important to understand that it's algorithms, indexes, and search engines that are automatically generating these profiles. So whether you like it or not, you're going to be profiled by these systems if you begin to publish your work. They will be creating profiles automatically, because that's how they distinguish between the different researchers and identify which works go to which researchers. AI is now being used, as I mentioned at the beginning, to analyze, summarize, and identify elements within the scholarly literature. And this is having impacts on these profiles, because your content is getting sort of summarized by these bots, and then they are representing your content in summary form on various other websites. It's very interesting. If you're looking for a recent article about this topic, I would recommend Artificial Intelligence Search Engines Wrangle Academic Literature by Amanda Hite. And the link is there. I'll be sharing the slides after. So it's really a cutting edge topic these days, AI in scholarly communications, and there's lots of developments being made. Okay, so let's, now that we've established the basics, dive into best practices of scholarly identity. So you first and foremost want to make sure that your online scholarly identity matches and accurately reflects you and your work. So a good practice in life is to Google yourself every now and again to see what's out there. Well, I would recommend to Google Scholar yourself. Google Scholar search yourself, I should say. Google Scholar is a platform just for scholarly works, and you can see if there's already a profile for you out there, or if your work is already being associated with others online. And you want to determine which databases, platforms, and identifiers matter most in your field and related fields. There are a lot of them out there. You want your profile to be where the profiles of other people in that field are. As graduate students, this would be your professors, your faculty members. If you are applying to a field or a career path that has a profiling system such as this, you would want to know that and make sure that you were there, or your work was at least there, so that it would be found by the people most relevant to that content. Furthermore, you want to always utilize ways to automate updates and connect profiles to minimize maintenance. So these databases, once you establish your profile, can be used to continue to update your profile. And simply by connecting your profiles, you can create this sort of seamless web of online that people who are interested in your work can follow. And it means that you won't have to go back in there and update and add new works yourself. Also, just sort of another really important best practice, you want to make sure there aren't duplicate profiles out there of you on the same platform. And this is more a problem for faculty who switch institutions, but it could be if you publish something while you're at Adelphi, and then you publish something later on while you are at a different institution, you might find yourself with two profiles, because the system says, okay, well, this is, Chris Barnes at Adelphi, and this is Chris Barnes at University of Michigan. These are two different people, so let's create two different profiles for them. And you would want to tell the system that they are actually the same and to combine them. You also wanted to, especially as graduate students, maintain a separate online personal identity, especially on social media. And when you set up these accounts, you want to make sure you use your own personal email, so like a Gmail account, so that if your email changes or you lose access to it, you don't lose access to the platform and your profiles as well. A few more points to consider. You want to distinguish between SI platforms like the ones we'll cover today and social media platforms like X and Facebook. Another good one is LinkedIn, which is sort of trying to straddle both worlds. It is not the same as this kind of platform. ResearchGate and academia.edu are deeply problematic. They're sort of commercial versions of these platforms. Just as a sidebar, academia.edu, anyone can get a .edu web address. It does not mean that it should be trusted as an educational institution. So if you have profiles set up at these websites, it's important to do your best to migrate to a more open and nonprofit profiling system, so that people won't have to create accounts and the like and get monitored when they go and look at your work, which is what happens at ResearchGate and academia.edu. Also, there are lots of different features and tools out there. So before you create a profile at one site, make sure there isn't another site that has better tools and features that you would utilize more. You don't want to have to create, this is another important point, you don't want to create so many profiles that you're not able to maintain them all, right? So you want to have maybe 1, 2, maybe 3, but no more than that. So now let's look at some individual platforms for scholarly identity management and the features that they use. ORCID is increasingly becoming the most commonly used scholarly identifier. ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID. And increasingly, when you are applying for funding or submitting a manuscript for publication, or even sometimes applying for graduate school or a job, you would include your ORCID, because the idea is that this is going to be your permanent identifier and provide a stable link to a profile that gives authoritative information about your work. So if you don't do anything else besides, only do one thing after this webinar, and I would encourage it to be setting up your ORCID profile. If you do two things, I would say it would be setting up your Google Scholar profile as well. Google Scholar is probably the platform that most of you have heard of before. It's an academic search engine that also has scholar profiles associated with it. And it is increasingly also becoming one of the most popular platforms out there, mainly because it is free to use and it is accessible around the world. So another is Semantic Scholar, and this is one of the AI-powered search engines, and we'll be looking a bit more at the cool new AI-powered tools that they're using and developing. Next is Elsevier's Scopus. You may have worked with this database in your time at Adelphi. It's a subscription database that the university pays money to Elsevier to have access to. And thanks to that access, we also can partake of the various tools and cool features that Scopus has that some of the other platforms don't have. And we'll be, again, looking more at that in a minute. The final two are Humanities Commons and Scholarly Works, both of which share some similarities. Humanities Commons attempts to be sort of a one-stop shop for a humanities scholar who is interested in creating an online presence, because they not only allow you to create a profile, but they allow you to create your own website. They allow you to join various groups, and they also provide you with a repository or an online database that you can upload your works to, where people can read them and download them if they want. And so the cool thing about Humanities Commons is that it really is a place that brings together many different disciplines within the humanities, and it is sort of the home for various humanities societies online. And so they have managed to make it the Commons a place that is actually very filled with various groups and individuals in the digital sense. And Haystack is one example of such an organization that stands for humanities, arts, science, technology coming together in collaboratory, something association collaboratory. We'll be looking at it more in a moment. And if you're in the humanities field, it's definitely worth checking out. Last but not least is Scholarly Works, which is Adelphi's own institutional repository. And it is an online portal for published and unpublished works, both scholarly and creative, by faculty, students, and administrators at Adelphi. And so the best use case I can offer you is depositing a conference presentation. You get accepted to a conference, you work really hard on your poster or your presentation or your paper, and you present, and then what? Oftentimes, nothing. Oftentimes, that paper just lives on your desktop forever. Or it's a line in your resume, but there's no content associated with it. Well, with Scholarly Works, you would be able to upload or deposit that presentation or paper. It would be given a permanent online home and a digital object identifier that you could add to your CV so that people could click on it and be taken directly to the full text of that work. This also would apply for things like capstone projects, master's theses, and the like. Okay, so now let's dive into the actual platforms themselves, and we're going to start off with Google Scholar. This should be a very familiar screen to most of you, and we're going to be looking at the My Profile section, which you may have already explored yourself. So by clicking on that, you reveal your profile, and here's mine. Let's look at some of the various components of this. So we have the ability to follow individuals. So if there are people out there who want to be notified when you publish a new work, they can click on this and get that notification. You can also add keywords and phrases that apply to your scholarship, again, helping individuals who find your profile understand your work. You can also verify your email at Adelphi or at whatever institution you are when you create the profile as a means of further displaying to the world that this is in fact your profile and it is maintained by you. And then last but not least, we see here the various ways that you can add new content to your Google Scholar profile. You can add them as groups or manually, or as we'll see in a second, you can do it using the DOI link. So if you click on Add Articles, it will search for your name in Google Scholar and present you with a list of all of the different works authored by individuals with your name that it thinks are by you. So here's my list. None of these were by me. Again, I have a very common name. There's lots of Chris Barneses out there in academia. And so I had to scan through all of these and tell it, no, this was not me. However, if you already have your work out there online, this can be a very good way of easily just checking off what's yours and having it added to your profile. If you want to add an article manually, so it's not online, it's just going to be linked to perhaps from a profile of yours, you can add it manually and enter all of the usual bibliographic information here, just as you would in any other sort of normal profiling system. Here's an example of another faculty member at Adelphi, Kate Krasinski. This is noteworthy because she has, on the right-hand side here, a public access section. And this is when individuals are funded by the federal government. The federal government requires that public access is provided to any research that results from that funding. And so if you have a grant, say from the National Science Foundation, Google Scholar will recognize that and provide information about the grants and the work that you're doing. Again, this needs to often be corrected because Google is casting this enormous net with their giant algorithm and pulling in as much as possible, and oftentimes it's not 100% accurate. But that's why it's important to be able to go in and edit these. And I've provided a link here to the FAQ for the public access section for anyone who wants additional information about that. Now we're moving on to ORCID. Orchid, as I mentioned, is open researcher contributor ID, and it is super, super easy to register. You can do it in 3 easy steps, and I highly recommend doing it if you haven't done it already. What does an Orchid profile look like? Here's mine. Okay, all of these are collapsed down, so we'll look at them in a moment. But you can see that my actual Orchid ID is here. And this number gets associated with every work that I publish. So now I've got an article out at a journal, and if it gets published, my Orchid ID will appear underneath my name alongside Adelphi and my email address. I've got links here to other places where I have content at my previous places of employment: University of Michigan, Gettysburg, Franklin and Marshall. But most importantly, we're going to see here all the elements of my, say, CV or resume I'm able to incorporate into this profile. So when I am looking for a job, this is a really good way of presenting the relevant information to prospective employers as well as other graduate schools potentially. So you can add things like membership and service. So if you're a member of a certain national organization, you can add that here. You can also add your employment, whether it's a part-time, full-time job, a relevant or academic or professional. But the most important thing about Orchid is the ability to add your works here. And so this is what it looks like when you open the Works tab. I've got 33 of them in here at the moment, and you will see that the information of like date, DOI, things like that are presented here. And if I open it up for more detail, I'm going to be able to get even more information. In terms of adding works to my profile, I've got lots of options. I can add by DOI, Digital Object Identifier. I can search for it and link to it. I can add by PubMed ID, or I can add it manually. I mentioned that this is a good place if you're looking for work to, offer to prospective employers and potentially graduate schools a description about yourself. So I don't have my biography enabled, and that's what I'm indicating here by that red dot. But when I am on the job market, I make this visible, and it gives a nice biography of myself, and I can say what kind of job I might be looking for, what my areas of expertise are. The same over here, I'm able to list my various email addresses, and you can see my personal email here. I blacked it out, but again, I don't have these publicly visible. And here are my keywords if I wanted to edit them. Okay, so this is Professor Kate Fiore's profile. Whoops. And the reason why I have it here is because if you are fortunate enough to get involved with peer review at this stage in your career, you would be able to indicate this on your profile. And so here, Kate is reviewing for psychology and aging, and you can see this is a good way of displaying this to others as well. But just to go back a second, you see this arrow here on Kate's profile. It says Scopus author ID, and this is actually hyperlinked, and that is a link to her Scopus profile. As I mentioned earlier, you want to connect your profiles whenever possible so that individuals can go easily from one to another. And so if someone wanted to look at Kate's Scopus author ID, author profile, they could click on that and be taken there immediately. The fact that she has connected her profile to Orchid means that her Orchid is automatically updated. So we can see that the source for this record is Kate, but via Scopus Elsevier, meaning that Kate went in, made the connection between Scopus and Orchid, and ever since then, Scopus has been populating new works to Kate's Orchid profile. If we now move over to Scopus, we can see that Kate's Orchid profile is linked from Scopus, right? So you can get from Orchid to Scopus, from Scopus to Orchid, okay? You can see now that we're in Scopus that it looked quite different than what we found in ORCID. Remember, ORCID is open and free. Scopus is a subscription database, so there are a lot more bells and whistles here, a lot more tools and features that you could take advantage of. Um, so you want to definitely connect your ORCID if you are interested in creating a Scopus profile. The individual articles, when they're in your profile, look like this. So you can connect to the work at Adelphi. You can go to the publisher, and there are lots of other tabs that can be clicked on to give people interested in your work a better understanding. So if you had posted your work as a preprint, you would be able to include it here as well. So let's look at a couple of those cool tools. So analyze author output and citation overview are two on Scopus. And you can see here, analyze author output produces this really cool pie chart of your publications and scholarship. And then citation overview gives you an overview. And again, I realize you're graduate students. This is far in the future where you get here. But once you have published quite a bit and you say you go down the line of professor career, this would be really valuable to you because you have to show that your research and scholarship is impactful. And one of the ways you do that is by talking about where your work and how often your work has been cited. And so Scopus allows you to do that very easily by keeping track of that information for you. And it's a great tool. Maybe not right now in your career, but in the future, perhaps. I mentioned the preprints. Preprints came into the news a lot during COVID. Preprints are non-peer-reviewed manuscripts of articles that are publicly posted, and these can be linked to your Scopus ID as well. Archive is yet another profiling system, and this is a preprint server that also allows for the creation of scholarly profiles, or author identifiers, as they call them. All right, now we're moving on to Semantic Scholar. Again, this is the AI-powered search engine, so this is kind of like Google Scholar, but on AI. If you, one of our faculty members, Christina Marini, if you search here, you can see that even though it's not a very common name, there are multiple accounts, multiple profiles rather, for C. Marini, one in psychology, one in medicine, and one in geology. And the one we are interested in is psychology. But again, it'd be important to claim that profile. Now let's look at some of the AI-powered features. So, oh, sorry, this is how you would claim your author page. If you claim it, they'll send you an email saying, we'll get back to you in a few days. Okay, TLDR. So this is one of those things that AI is doing. So rather than present you with the full, say, 300-word abstract of this paper, artificial intelligence is summarizing that entire abstract into 1 to 2 sentences. So this entire abstract was reduced down to theoretical frameworks and empirical evidence are highlighted that illustrate the relevance of systemic approaches to supporting service members, veterans, and their families. They don't know, that is Semantic Scholar, whether or not this is actually working well. So they want to know if this abstract is actually being well represented by this TLDR. And obviously TLDR, for those of you who don't know, means too long, didn't read. And you would include that in your email if you write a super long one and you're like, oh my God, no one's going to read this. And you just put TLDR at the top and put your basic point in there. So they want to know if it's working well. And so for many of these features, they provide a means of offering feedback. And here's one of them. For the TLDR feature, did it do a good job or not so good job? Another invention of AI is this here, which are highly influential citations. So you can see that all citations 53, so this work has been cited by 53 other works, but 5 of those works are considered by this database to be highly influential. And so what the idea here is that it is picking out those super important works of yours and flagging them so that people can more easily identify them. This is a benefit of AI because it can do this so easily. Question becomes if this is actually a benefit to scholars and researchers out there. Now we'll move on to Humanities Commons. And again, this is the best place, regardless of your department. If you're in the humanities, you definitely want to check this out. Here's the homepage, and it goes over all of the different things that they give you access to. You can create a site, you can join a group, you can create or update your profile. And here's an example of a profile by one of our own faculty members, Professor Simone Allegre. And you can see here in the top left corner that she has linked to her other profiles, both personal and professional. So there's her X handle. This is her Humanities Commons handle. And then this is her ORCID ID. And then this is a link to her Adelphi faculty profile. Again, you want to provide your those who are viewing your profile with trusted links to other aspects of your career or presence online. The profile itself allows for the person to display their academic interests, the groups they're in, as well as their something about themselves. Here, she is elected to talk more about the kinds of work that she is interested in. And so Humanities Commons promotes itself as offering you the option of creating a professional profile, discussing common interests with peers, developing new publications, and sharing your publications. And that's because it is a repository. So you can upload works of yours to this repository, and they will live online, and you will have a link or URL for that you can add to your resume, or you can put on your own website to link to it. And so what it does is tries to be all encompassing for humanities scholars by giving them not just a profile, but an actual place to put stuff. Another place to put stuff is Adelphi University Scholarly Works. This is our institutional repository. As I mentioned earlier, that means that it should be considered an online portal for all of the great scholarship and creative works produced by the students, the faculty, and the professional staff at Adelphi. And so what this offers you is the ability to, as with Humanities Commons, upload works and easily share them using a link. So if you go to Scholarly Profiles and we get you set up there, you will be able to access your own content and the back end. And you can add content. What kind of content? Well, here's a list of all the different kinds of content. I won't read them all, but like scholarly articles, preprints, postprints, conference papers, and presentations. For my money, that is the best use case for this, is those kinds of works that weren't really publications, that might not normally be found online after they're presented at a conference or the event. Those are great things to add to scholarly works so that they can be found by individuals around the world. So it's not just scholarly stuff, it's also creative works as well. And if we can't host it natively within Scholarly Works, so if it's like a 2-hour-long film that someone created, we would be able to host it on YouTube and then stream it to Scholarly Works. So there's lots of options for how to handle different kinds of content. So Scholarly Works, first and foremost, is a discovery platform so that you can enable others to find your work. For faculty members who publish in a paywall journal, they are able, if they want, to take a manuscript version of that work and add it to the platform so that individuals without a subscription or unable to afford that content behind the paywall are still able to get to the content, if not the version of record, the pretty final version that the publisher produces. This is important to know too, because in your own research, you might find yourself facing a paywall and not wanting to pay it. Of course, as a librarian at Adelphi, I would encourage you never to pay anything before speaking to a librarian. But you might be able to easily find an open access version through someone's institutional repository. It's often a good way of finding that and other works by those individuals. The full text of works is what is shared in scholarly works, in addition to links out to the full text or records elsewhere. But the idea is that someone's going to be able to come to scholarly works, click on your profile, and view the full text of your presentation, of your paper, of your publication. Scholarly Works is crawled by Google and Google Scholar, so if you add a work here, eventually Google Scholar should find it and say, hey, would you like us to add this to your Google Scholar profile? And then lastly, Scholarly Works provides usage stats, so you're able to see where and how often your work is being downloaded. So here's an example of one of the maps, the downloads by country. As you can see, there's really a global reach for Adelphi scholarship with people accessing it from around the world. Scholarly Works is also a sharing platform. So we give you a digital object identifier, as I've mentioned many, many times, which is a stable link that you can add to your resume or to websites, even your email signature. Citations for anything that's in Scholarly Works can be exported, and they can be formatted as MLA, APA, and various file types. It's fairly easy to deposit works. You might be tired of having to manually enter lots of stuff. Well, with Scholarly Works, all you have to do is enter a URL or a DOI, or most publications these days have those already. So it's just a much faster way of adding content. And lastly, if you have a lot of publications, again, this is more for a faculty member than a grad student, but if you did have a lot of work to add, we could add them as a batch, as long as they have a DOIs already. And that is the end of my presentation. I really want to thank you for attending today and direct you to these sites for additional information. There's the Scholarly Identity Guide, which I mentioned earlier. That's where I'll be posting the slides in the video. There's the Scholarly Works FAQ, which answers basic questions about Scholarly Works. And then I've also included a link that will allow you to email me directly, which I would strongly encourage you to do if you have any questions at all, or I can help you in any way with some of the stuff that I've talked about today. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now so that I can open it up to have a full, robust conversation with all of you if you are interested. And so I will